Well, good morning, everybody. We're all amazed here to see how many people have shown up at 10 o'clock on an Art Basel morning. Amazing. But of course, it isn't really amazing because we do have the greatest panel here this morning, and I know you're all eager to hear from our panelists. I'm Bonnie Clearwater. You know me as the Director and Chief Curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami. However, I want to make it very clear that today I am representing me because somebody who has been involved with the South Florida art scene since, now I have to really give my date myself, 1985. When I headed the Lannan Foundation's art programs in LA, but also the Lannan Museum in Lake Worth, Florida, a museum established by a private collector, J. Patrick Lannan, and that was in Lake Worth, Florida, of contemporary art, of emerging, cutting-edge contemporary art. So I have this unique position of knowing how contemporary art has evolved in South Florida, and have basically had a relationship with everybody here predating my involvement with the Museum of Contemporary Art, with the exception of Ella Cisneros, who came a little later. But and on top of that, I have studied the way consensus forms in the art world, how art centers evolve, and in fact, the inaugural exhibition for the Museum of Contemporary Art was defining the 90s consensus making in New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Yes, in 1996, it was already clear that Miami had evolved into was evolving into a major art center. And everybody that you see here played an essential role already by that time. Ella was a little after, but I wrote about each one of these collectors in their role in establishing Miami as a vibrant art center. And I believe it really is because of their presence, their activity, that Art Basel decided that of all the cities in the world it could have chosen to have their second fair, they chose Miami. So that's why we are all here this morning, and just a brief introduction because we have a lot of ground to cover, starting with Carlos de la Cruz.
Hi, my name is Carlos de la Cruz, and my wife Rosa and I have the de la Cruz collection in the Design District.
I'm Dennis Scholl. We have a space called World Class Boxing in the Design District, and I've been collecting with my wife Deborah for 33 years in Miami.
I'm Ella Cisneros. I have a space called CIFO, Cisneros Fontanals Art Foundation, next to the Performing Arts Center.
I'm Margulies, and I've been collecting about 30 years. And I have a space in the Wynwood area.
Irma Braman. We have a private collection, not open to the public, but anyone here is welcome to come. Once a year, we do a dinner for Mocha for $1,000 a head. You can see the collection, get great food and super wine.
Nice plug.
If Dennis says he's collecting 32 years, I think I should say we've been collecting 33 years, Dennis. Even if it's not so, it sounds right.
Whatever you have to do, Irma, it's okay with me.
I'm Norm Braman, Irma's husband.
Well, I should also, as a disclosure, say that Irma and Norman were the honorary chairs of MoCA's inaugural in 1996, and now they are the honorary chairs of our 15th anniversary celebration dinner on February 25th. And of course, Irma's been on the board since 1996, most of those years as chairman. And thank you, Irma. But we're here representing the collections, but that's a little disclosure. Irma and Norman have, okay, so you've been collecting, we've established at least 33 years. You were really instrumental in bringing the Art Basel here. I mean, why did you think that this was going to be so important for our community?
Well, we had been attending the fair in Basel, Switzerland for many, many, many years prior to Art Basel coming to Miami Beach. And basically, a number of us, most of us on this platform today, established relationships with the people at Art Basel. And we sort of kept wearing them down over the years. Well, why not consider a second fair 6 months after the major fair in Basel, Switzerland, which generally occurs around the second week of June each year. And fortunately, they came to visit our community. They liked what they saw. We, the collectors, and those of us living here, offered them the unique hospitality, openness involving our collections, cooperation, and to Messerschmidt's credit, Messerschmidt is the for-profit company that owns Art Basel. They made a decision to come to Miami. And in terms of its influence on our community, I'm sure we're going to get into that. But that's really how it started and how it basically evolved. It evolved as a for-profit venture on the part of this company to come here, and took a lot of courage on their part. The first fair was supposed to commence in December of 2011. Of 2001. And then the horrible events of 9/11 occurred, and the catalogs had been printed. The hall had undergone extensive renovations, and a decision was made by the Messerschmidt's company, the Art Basel people, to postpone the fair for 1 year. And it was an expensive decision on their part, a right decision on their part. So here we are 10 years later, celebrating this great success.
Now, your collection was already very well established. Some of the top artists of the 20th century already in it. And not only top artists, but key works by those artists. And but I've seen changes in the work, what works that you've been collecting over the last 10 years. And Irma, you and I were just talking about whether the fair has impacted your collecting at all.
The fair has impacted our collecting in a great way. Most of the people on this panel really travel more than we do, and they see a lot more than we do. When you travel, you go and you stop at the galleries, and you're looking, and you're learning, and you're speaking to people, and we really didn't do a lot of that. Art Basel, Basel, Switzerland, and Art Basel here gave us access to every gallery we would have seen had we spent a month in Berlin and 3 weeks in London and 5 weeks in Paris, and we just saw it all. We became friendly with some of the dealers that we would not have met otherwise because there was no time to do so. Consequently, we would see the art, and over the years, we have also made some really, very, really good friends in Basel because we're there once a year and they open their homes as we do, and other friends that we see at art venues, and it enhanced our collection. We saw things, as I said, we wouldn't have seen, and our focus changed in the last few years, and we're much more contemporary, I think, basically, than we were. And that's all due to learning and watching and seeing, and a lot of the things that we did collect today are unavailable. I mean, we were collecting 30-some years, and they're just not here anymore. They're bought, they're in museums, they're in private collections. And so for us to continue collecting, we decided to take a step forward, and which is what we did, and we're very happy with where we've come.
What are some of the artists that you've added since the fair?
Damien Hirst.
I think for me that was the biggest surprise.
It's the biggest surprise for most people. Damien Hirst, Maurizio Catalan.
Another big surprise.
As I said, we stepped out. Robert Gober.
Most recent.
5 days old. I think that's almost about it.
Yeah. But it's been great to see it. But also, I think you touched on another important point, is the idea of the relationships were built. I mean, one of the things about the art fair or any kind of event like this is that for a very intense period, you get the opportunity to have everyone, the entire art world, descend in one point. And the chance encounters, the friendships that you make, I mean, that has been something that you've really, both of you have enjoyed out of the fair. And you mentioned about traveling, and I know that I remember a fateful trip that Margulies and a few other collectors, including Rosa and Carlos de la Cruz, twisted my arm into organizing in the early 90s to go to Germany to Documenta, checking out the museums there. And I think for me, that was one of the real turning points, was seeing the art world, the contemporary art world in Germany. And we went all over. We saw private collections such as Rolf and Erika Hoffman's private collection. And Marty, you've always traveled. It's always an important part of your experience of looking. How do you go about finding these artists? How do you feel that the world itself has become smaller as a result of your relationships in the art world?
Well, I guess I have two collections, one being a private collection in the house, and that's a serious collection. And the other collection is a public collection, which is more serious fun than anything. And we go around and buy younger artists, photography, videos, installation work, and it's a very, very comprehensive type of activity in the sense that it's exhausting, like this week for us. I'm sure all the other people would agree, greeting people, and at the same time it's exhilarating. But you just look around and go to collections and go to museums, and eventually you choose your own aesthetic. It's not what the museums have, it's not what the other collectors have, it's what you feel, and your aesthetic is really what governs everything. And whether you're a retina type of person where you get an immediate reaction to something, or whether you're a conceptual type of collector, or both. And it just happens, and there's no formula for me.
Well, it is interesting, Marty. You really established two models that have become identified with Miami. First, with your development with Grovile, you created the outdoor sculpture garden at Grovile, which became, I think you did that just because you wanted to do it, not with this idea that it could be a marketing tool. But because of this model, we now see art as an important feature in hotels, retail, malls, as a way of bringing attention to a place. But I don't think that's why you originally did it. Your original reason was to get your outdoor sculptures out there.
Don't be so sure.
Oh, yeah? So tell me why you started doing the sculpture garden at Grovile.
Well, the sculpture garden, at that time, there weren't too many people buying large-scale sculpture. And I'd walk into a gallery and they'd say, here comes this guy from Miami that collects large-scale sculpture. And I put it on one of my projects. I'm a real estate developer. And it sort of happened again. People started saying, can we see the sculpture? So I set up some tours, and the ladies came down from Palm Beach and Lauderdale and Boca, and make sure you wear your comfortable shoes and sign a liability. And I don't want you tripping all over the stairways. And so I wound up calling them the girls, and they loved that. So we took them on tours, and it developed a life of its own, and said there's something to this. And so it just happened. And then I said, well, I can't just collect sculpture now, because I'm just the guy from Miami that collects sculpture. So I started collecting paintings, and then everything got so expensive, so I wasn't able to handle what I had previously been able to acquire. And that's what led to the warehouse, where I was able to put photography in there and videos and installation works, and most important, support younger artists, and that's what we do today. And we catered primarily to education.
Well, that's what's, both of those things started, just out of need and because you wanted to do it. And now, as I said, they've become sort of the model that's known as Miami. You opened the warehouse out of a need, out of a desire also to have it public. You could have just kept them all in the warehouse without it being open to the public. Why did you make the move to have it public?
Well, you just do it. I mean, it's nothing. You have a big space, and you start hanging things, and you say there's a great need for kids to get educated in this, and you hope that the school system recognizes that the arts are so critically important to people's growth, and these kids can derive tremendous benefit from it. So.
But I've also seen you give tours, and it's amazing to see how you light up. In fact, all of you, I see you all light up as you're talking about the work. And I'm curious, what is it about the collecting? What is it about having those works that is feeding a need, an intellectual curiosity, an aesthetic quality in you? Why is this so important to you?
Well, one of the French philosophers wrote an article that when you're exposed to art, there's a certain educational aspect to it. And you develop that aspect, and when you collect it, you can control that. But at the end of the day, after you've controlled it, it really creates an identity. So it's very important for a human being to have an identity. And I felt very strongly that I was looking at my past history in real estate. They're not going to say, hey, this guy built this store building on 163rd Street. Isn't that terrific? So we all strive for some type of identity. And people know me as an art collector. And if I say I built this great building, they say, so what? There's a lot of great buildings around. But each collection is unique. And it sort of brands you and identifies you. And you look at other collections and you develop a certain amount of respect for those collections. When I was younger and much more aggressive, I would say, wow, I wish I had that. And I think, gee, I wish I had that. But then as you get older, you don't say that anymore. You just say, boy, what a wonderful collection this is. I really respect it. And the more exposure you get, the better off you can learn.
One of the things you just said is something that I observed. As I say, I study different art centers. And what I think is unique about the collections in Miami is that each one is distinctly your own. There's some overlaps, but in most cases, you have a very clear vision for what your focus is for your work. And Ella, who had come a little later. Actually, Ella, when did you move to Miami?
I moved in 1996, around 1996.
1996. Yes. And what brought you to Miami as opposed to anywhere else to establish a collection?
Originally, my family moved here because of all the political unrest and violence that we had in our country, unfortunately, and we had to move. And my daughters married here, and my grandchildren are all American. So we started, by just being here because of all the situation that we had. So eventually, after a while, this was something I have been collecting from the 70s, around the 70s, and I started collecting Latin American art. And I had a gallery when I was very young, and at a certain point in my life, I stopped collecting because I thought that my country needed a lot for me to focus in other different areas that were happening, with kids. So I started working with kids in the streets. I started working with hospitals, and I stopped collecting for 6 or 7 years in my life. Then I picked it up again, and I started collecting more of a worldwide. I was interested in the world, it had become global, and the internet was helping us, to connect to so many other places. So at a certain point, I started thinking, well, this is my time. I'm getting older, and if I don't do what I really am passionate about right now, when am I going to do it? So I was here. This was home for the time being. I was here. Nothing was happening in Venezuela, and then I took the decision to just start a foundation and to start opening a place. I originally opened a space called MAC in the south, and my idea was to bring exhibitions that were not seen here in Miami. They were not being shown in the museums. So I started bringing exhibitions from Germany and from other parts of the country, etc. And my idea was to be involved in what I had passion in art, but also to show the public things, to share with the public things. I'm very much all the time involved into what I'm leaving behind. I'm always thinking, when I pass by this life, what is it that I'm going to be remembered by? My children, my grandchildren, and this is my passion. So I thought, well, then I have to share it with everybody. Then I opened the foundation, and I said, well, my philanthropy has to go to where my roots are, which is Latin America, and being Miami a place in which Latin Americans are so important, and a majority, actually, I decided, well, let's help Latin American emerging artists and mid-career artists, and that has been the focus of the foundation for 10 years. We will be 10 years
That's
next
amazing.
year, and we've been working with prizes and bringing Latin American emerging artists into this country, helping them get galleries, connecting them to Europe, connecting them to a different world and the possibilities that they don't have in their own countries. But the collection have always been global. I have a lot of interest in one area, which is the geometrical abstraction from Latin America, and that's something that has been very close to my heart. So I have developed that area a lot. Although, when you start collecting, you say, oh, I like this artist, and they're doing video. So I started collecting video without even noticing, and it started growing that area too. Or photography, or when you're a collector, you just things happens on your way, and you start learning on your way, and things become what they are. Then I found myself going into the historical part of different things. I started collecting a lot of conceptual art, and which I'm sure if you've been to the foundation, I have an exhibition on conceptual art, historic conceptual art from the 60s to the 80s. And things are, I don't know, for a collector, for me, the focus of trying to bring to the public and to this community something that really is my vision, but also, an open window to my vision and to what I do. Also, it's refreshing, and it helps me, be stronger and be more involved into, what I'm doing.
Well, you also, we talked about the fact that through all of your activities, how the excitement of Basel for 5 days continues through the year. And especially the importance of becoming an international art center. And we all, at the same time, supporting the local scene, local artists. I think we've all played a big role in that. How, I see that what you've done with Latin American artists and bringing in shows from all over has played an important role in emphasizing Miami as this cultural hub. I mean, is that something that you aim for as a way of defining Miami and as increasing the value for the public?
Yes, I think that in the later years we have seen in Miami the growth of the Latin American community, also because of all the troubles and all the problems that we're having in the many countries. But a lot of Latin Americans have moved to Miami, and Miami have become this like bridge in between Latin America and America. And doing the things that we're doing, I think we are supporting that community who has been growing in Miami, and telling them that, this is home too, that you can find here the things that we've been, so close to for so many years there. And I would like to say that, that maybe we are part of that openness and to that community.
And you and Dennis and Deborah do something similar in that you bring in outside curators to
Yes.
bring a new focus to your collection.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask Dennis how this started, why you thought it was important to have outside curators bring a different look at your collection.
We were pretty good at picking the art. We were really lousy at hanging it. Every time I bought something, I'd bring it home and put it over the mantle for like 3 weeks and go, that's the new thing. When you get to 200 or 300 or 400 new things, there's no juxtaposition, there's no context. And so we asked one day a pretty good curator, a guy named Douglas Fogel, who some of you may know, to come down, and we gave him the keys to the house. We emptied it out, nice white box, gave him the keys to the storage, gave him a bunch of art wranglers, and we just left for 3 days. And when we came back, we had a pretty good museum installation, and it didn't take long for the light bulb to go on for me to say, this might work. So over the last 10 years, that's what we've been doing. Is every year we invite, a wonderful curator, Connie Butler, Rochelle Steiner, Trevor Schoonmaker, Nick Baum, who's now running the Public Art Fund, and we just say, here are the keys, here's the storage, do what you want. And the joy of it is that you find something that you bought in 1982 that you've completely forgotten about, frankly, because there's just too much stuff, sitting next to something you bought last Tuesday, which is generally how we collect anyway. We collect art that was made last Tuesday, usually. That's kind of what our collection strategy is. But you put those two things together, and you see them in a completely different light. And that's been a really joyful experience for us, frankly. It's really kept us in tune with the collection. It's the same way when Marty's at the warehouse, I think, by being able to see the objects on a regular basis as opposed to see them in racks, it really connects you with the objects again and again. And you also get to learn from some of the smartest people in the world. The curators that do this for a living and get up every morning and think about this stuff are really, really special. So if you're interested in collecting, you have to go and connect with a curator at your local museum, because they will take you so much further, so much faster than any other opportunity you'll have.
But you also decided, besides having it in your house, you and Deborah opened a space as well. You want to tell us a little bit about the program for that?
Yeah, we went to a show and we saw a piece that was 400 square feet, and we couldn't bear to live without it, but we didn't have any place to live with it. That's how you get a space. We brought it home and we looked around, and we bought a warehouse, and we solely for the purpose of installing that one piece. And then 3 weeks later, we went back up to the city and we bought another piece that was 22 feet wide and spun around. And so, the space, people struggle sometimes with the spaces, and I understand that. But the space for a collector that's a fairly obsessive collector, as all of my friends up here are, I might add, it liberates you to have a space like that, because you can invite an artist who might not get the opportunity to have a big white room in a museum for a few years, and invite them down and say, look, here's a beautiful space, here's a 30-foot long wall, do your thing. And that's a really great way to learn about artists and their practice, and you can get some pretty cool objects too when you do it. So the space came out of that moment where we found something we couldn't live with but didn't have a way to live with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you also touched on a very important thing. People wonder why there is this Miami model of public spaces. Well, frankly, most of the work that the collectors collect here, especially since it's contemporary, happens to be enormous installations, film projections, things that just really don't fit in a house. I know, Carlos, when you started designing the last expansion on your home, at one point I said to Rosa, we need to find a place where Carlos is going to sit. because the art had pretty much taken over the entire house, and that included enormous installations. And I do think you still have a little place.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
That's exactly,
yeah.
that's exactly
Right. And frankly, I can't imagine your neighbors were all that happy with all the buses coming into that little cul-de-sac on
Right.
Key Biscayne. So, I mean, you're more recent in this idea of having a public space. And can you just tell us about why that came about? I mean, obviously, I just
Yeah.
led into it, but...
Yeah, sure. We as you say, well, first of all, the children were the first catalyst for us to get into collection, because when they moved out, then we had more space, and then we bought the house across the street, because I found that the pitter patter of grandchildren, you get used to it for Christmas time, and then they'd leave, and then I was, what happened to the noise? And so I bought the house across the street so they could move in there, and that's what gave us the space at our house. And we added to the house twice in terms of space. So now we have a 15,000 square foot house with 1 bedroom.
Which,
And a
by the way,
tiny
looks like a
bedroom at
prison
that.
cell. It's the smallest room I've
Right,
ever
it
seen.
is the smallest room in the house, you're right. And then the collection outgrew it. The house was built with large walls, so the problem, there are very few pieces that don't fit in the house, and we don't distinguish hierarchically between what we put in the house and what we put in the space. I've found over the years that the thing that interests me is that it's difficult if all of your art is the same. I find that to the extent that you can have a variation in themes, it keeps it fresher and it lets you think more, which is really what art does for me. So we have from German strong, very figurative art to American very abstract art that concentrates more on the process. When we went to build a space, we looked obviously at Marty's space. We looked at to get an inspiration. We were looking also at Ella and Dennis, and I've known all of these people for a very long time. And we looked at buying an old, actually an old dairy on North Miami Avenue, and I convinced Rosa that would have been a money pit. And come out with something that really wasn't going to make me very happy. So we bought in the design district the land and then built the space from scratch. I think it frankly works very well for us because it's a boutique type, and it's really built for us, a small office, open office, and we run it with 5 or 6 people. We have a strong educational component that interests me because I've always been involved with education, and Rosa too, and I'm talking about formal institutions like universities and high schools, and we have a space dedicated for local artists that they can come in, and that's the only art we show that's not ours. We don't buy it from them. We let them sell it and keep 100% of the proceeds, and we pay for the art, for the building of it, so that they don't have an out-of-pocket.
No, we should mention that Rosa is at the space right now,
Right,
greeting
right.
hordes of people there.
Yeah.
But one thing you do, almost all of you collect together, with your significant others. Do you and Rosa see eye to eye on everything, or you have a different focus?
We have a slightly different focus. I mean, but we've always it's never been a problem for us. But we do have a slightly different focus. I wanted to get into painting earlier, and she was into installations. I find that installations are difficult to continue. First of all, they're very difficult to recreate. Which makes it, especially some of them. For example, the installation we have at home on the 2nd floor Assume Vivid Astrofocus has been up for something like 7 or 8 years. But I know if we take it down, that'll be it. And because where are you going to get the wallpaper and everything else? So basically, it stays up. He cried when he came back after 5 years. This is the only place that he stayed up that long. So it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, also you touched on another important role that you all play is in the role of education. And I think that more than anything is going to have the long-range impact on our community. One of the really wonderful programs that you and Rosa have initiated, which the Knight Foundation has also helped make possible.
That's right.
Is taking the
Yeah,
students.
we work, I mean, I've worked with, or we've worked with, Dennis and I have worked together on business years ago, how long was it? My God, 84.
34 years.
34 years. Seriously, it's a long time. And now we're working together on philanthropy. The De La Cruz collection is not a foundation. It's not a not-for-profit. It's not a for-profit. It's a.
I can pretty much assure you it's not a for-profit.
No, it's for expense. But basically, or for loss. But I can't take the losses. But basically, what we have is we don't collect any money. We have zero income. So we've teamed up with the Miami-Dade Foundation. And partnered with them in the sense that they provide the administrative vehicle and the recipient of funds that we try to raise for educational programs that we monitor and implement. And we went to the Knight Foundation, specifically to Dennis and to Alberto Ibargüen, who very generously have cooperated with us. And last year, or actually it's this year, but last summer we cooperated on 2 summer programs with DASH and with the New World School of the Arts, where we took students, and these are students that really don't have much income, to both, some went to Europe, they went to Berlin and to Venice with us. They stayed with us at the same hotel we did, and we walked around with them, and it was a lot of fun. And then the others went to New York and had a training program at SVA, School of Visual Arts in New York. And they were given classes. We also, and that was funded, well actually the Bramans were involved in the funding as well, as was Marty. So everybody here sort of worked together on getting that to happen. And it was, it gives local kids a chance to see something that they otherwise wouldn't see. We also had 11,000 students that funded by ourselves of the Dade County Public School System that come through the institution every year, and we provide a local artist as a teacher for a day. We feed them, we take them around the collection, and then they get bused back to the school at 4 o'clock so they can go home. And that's another educational program that we have.
And we've all, at institutions and the collections, we can see directly what the impact is, having the museums, having these spaces, having the philanthropy. Oops. And I could tell you directly, one of our teen students that's in our program at MoCA, she was picked, the only junior, or one of 2 juniors picked for the New York program, and it changed her life. She's an extraordinary student. I've taken a special interest in her because I do feel she is being receptive to this and is going to do amazing things, and I was so happy that she had this experience. Now, one of the things that's interesting with the Knight Foundation, I mean, we are very fortunate to have the Knight Foundation that has really recognized that in order to capitalize on what's happening as a result of Basel for the last 10 years, how do you keep it going? How do you really make an impact? And the Knight Foundation is actually done, we all have anecdotes, we've all seen it ourselves, but the Knight Foundation has actually quantified these impacts. Dennis, can you talk about what the impact of the arts
Sure.
are on our community?
My day job is as the Vice President of Arts for the Knight Foundation, one of the largest private foundations in America. And we did this study with the Gallup organization for 3 years in a row in 26 communities. It's called the Soul of the Community. We call it the Soul Poll in the office. And we asked people just a simple question. And we asked them, what is it that attaches you to your community? What is it that makes you love where you live, in essence? And in all 26 communities, in all 3 years, the number one attachment concept for people to their community is social offerings, which includes cultural offerings. And the second thing is openness. How are people treated in your community? And the third thing is aesthetics. Is the sun shining? Are there mountains? Are there beaches? Things like that. And this sense of social offerings attaching people to their community is something that I don't think politicians understood. I don't think even we as philanthropists understood. We kept thinking it was about jobs or about the economy or something like that. People attach to where they live because of what they're able to do there. And that was a hard thing for us it felt counterintuitive to us, really, more than anything else. And so because of that, we've all been inoculated with this. I think I just go around and shoot everybody with it. But this community has had this epiphany, this incredible moment of which the fair has played a tremendous role. We have gone from being a place that frankly was not perceived internally or externally as a cultural place to being really a cultural destination, with the fair being a component of that, with these collections being a component of that, with our world-class ballet, with our crazy parking garage. Have you guys seen that Herzog and de Meuron parking garage? Yeah. Now we have a Zaha Hadid parking garage coming, because Miami, we do it once, not good enough. I got to do it like 3 times. So there are these, and we of course we only do it the Miami way. We couldn't do it like Philadelphia or Chicago. Enrique Norton is also finishing up a parking garage for us. So we're going to have Starkitect parking garages. I don't know. But the community has a different sense of itself, and it's a different place, and people feel culture being woven into the community. Our goal really, as we always say, is we want to make art general in this community, not special. And so we've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do that. And let me tell you, all these guys are our partners.
Yeah, I see that. Obviously the museums and including the public spaces of the collections. I see that it is something that is reaching out into the wider community. That because it's contemporary art, especially, it's something that, and I think Art Basel has actually helped this in the fact that there is so much attention about contemporary art, and it's shown to be important and necessary, that people have become very receptive to it. And I'm talking about the broad public, not just the collectors, not just the curators and artists. And I think that that's an important role that we've all played, is that if you can make a community receptive to innovation in art, you can help them become receptive to innovation, different ideas in the broader life, in everyday life. And I think that makes for a very dynamic community. And in our emphasis on education at the museum, it really is not just about the applied art, which is important, but it's about ideas, building critical thinking. And that's from children right through adults. And I get so much joy out of the fact that I do see these discussions happening with even little kids about the art, that start with the art. And the teens, how important the fact that the whole world opened up for them through the art. So I think that we realize that this is an essential thing that we're doing. It's not just an add-on. It's important to life. I know Irma and Norman, you've, with your association with the museum, but also with other institutions, you've seen firsthand what this does to the public. I mean, we have an Irma Braman scholarship for little kids to come to our art classes. I mean,
That was given kindly by my sister for my birthday. It was a wonderful surprise, and just a terrific thing. It was very heartwarming, and it continues on. Go ahead.
no, okay.
No.
But you both have been so involved with education. And I mean, how do you feel that the impact of the fair, the institutions, these collections has made on the Miami community?
Well, look where we are 10 years later. 10 years ago, we had, I think, 9 art galleries here in South Florida. Today, we have 70 art galleries here in South Florida. That in itself speaks worlds. We have 2 major architectural firms, the Herzog de Morian, who are building the new museum here, the Gwathmey Siegel, other architects who are supervising the addition to the Museum of Contemporary Art. This area is exploding, and it's becoming a cultural center. That's why some of us feel so strongly that casino gambling is wrong for this community. That we are at a point here of rivaling some of the great art areas in the world. And look what this community has done. The hospitality, what the Dela Cruzes and Marty and Ella and Dennis have done, and building these wonderful public areas here. It's unique, and that's what makes this fair so special, and that's what makes this community so special. I'll just tell you a little story because I think it's very interesting. Sam Keller was the first impresario for this fair, and he was truly a very unique individual. He's now the director of the Byler Foundation Museum in Basel, Switzerland. So when all these out-of-town people came here, especially from Basel, Switzerland, we opened up our homes. We opened up our collections because they were coming to this community for the first time. And this went on for 1 or 2 years, and Irma, who was a very direct speaking individual, always has been, for the 55 years of our marriage, said to Sam one day, well, we've been coming to the art fair in Basel, Switzerland now for 20 years, and we've never been invited into one private collection in Basel, Switzerland. And Irma said to Sam, I think half serious and half in jest, well, if they're not going to open up their collections in Basel for us, why should we open up our collections in Miami for them? Well, the next fair in Basel, Switzerland, we began receiving invitations to their homes. And it's been amazing because, as Irma said earlier, we've established wonderful relationships with all of these individuals over the years. And for those of you who are Miamians and who know this community, back in the 1990s, this community really received a horrible reputation worldwide. We had some terrible incidents of tourists here I think 2 of them being murdered who came here from Germany. We had a terrible reputation as far as crime was concerned. Well, here the art fair comes along. People visit this community and see Miami Beach and see the city and see South Florida in a totally different light here. I can't tell you how many people have bought homes here, who vacation here, who have brought their families here. So the fair has created an entirely different image worldwide for our community, and it's enriched our community where we're up there with all the major cities in the world, and coupled with the Knight Foundation. I mean, when Alberto Ibargüen took over as chair of the Knight Foundation is a $2 billion foundation. The Knight Foundation was never involved in the arts, and then they made the wise decision of bringing Dennis Scholl on board, and they've complemented all of our major museums, all of the efforts in terms of education. So here we are, looking forward to hopefully sitting here maybe 10 years from today and discussing where this community has come to that point.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, I know we've all gotten the same question from the press the last 10 years. How has Art Basel changed Miami? I always turn it around and say, let's look at how Miami has changed the way art fairs are done around the world. Right from the first year that didn't happen, the 2001 year, we were all ready for everyone to descend for Art Basel that year. And of course, as Norman said, the 9/11 changed that. But we all went ahead with our programs. We had the Liechtenstein show. We were packed for that. Everyone came from around the world. Art Basel continued to bring in their collectors that they had already planned to bring in, and everybody welcomed the out-of-towners for this event, plus our local community. The collections were open and welcoming. There were parties, and I know that in the early years, the press loved to say, "Oh, Miami's just this party place." That was the wrong interpretation. We were here to welcome people, make people feel like this was an event. It took over the entire city, not just the convention center. It became a different way of having an art fair. It expanded out of the fair itself. And I've always told people, if you're looking for a party, you can find a party for sure. But you can, if you're looking for art, it's here. It's definitely in Miami, and you can have that experience. Consequently, you see all around the world that where there's an art fair now, it takes over. The community embraces everyone who's welcoming, and I think that was one of the things that we truly changed here. The other thing is, Miami again got this party reputation. However, I can attest to the fact that there is a strong intellectual life here. There's a strong exchange of ideas that happen differently in Miami than I think in most places. There's a fluidity between, all different people about ideas. And I mean, one of the people I particularly enjoy exchanging ideas with is Carlos. We not only talk about art, but it's philosophy and science and even religion, and then how it ties, and history, and how we see this bigger picture. We email back and forth, and I think that, would you say that being part of the art world has actually helped you expand that vision?
Oh, no question. I mean, it started that and the internet. I mean, the internet really makes the exchange so easy. When I see an article that I know would trigger a conversation with Bonnie, I forward it to her, and she forwards it back with, I put my comments and she puts her comments. And as she says, we've talked about, and I've kept some articles that go back 30, 40 years from art critics, and we exchange those articles, and it influences, frankly, what you collect, which is the other interesting thing. It's not, it's this whole process of, now there seems to be a big, the last couple of years seems to be a big push on art, on paintings that are really more about the process of how the painting gets done than was the case before. And there are other, the difference between abstraction and figuration, all these things, and the size of the paintings, how you hang them. This year, if you go to the, and we exchange opinions on that. This year, if you go to the space, we hung contemporary art salon fashion, as not normally done, and it was a risk we took. But
looks great.
yeah, thank you.
Well, I know that here we have some of the most illustrious collectors sitting with us, and you've heard from them, and I know you're all dying to ask questions. So we are going to open it up to the public. And I believe that there's microphones here, people that will help you talk. But Do you have questions for our panelists? Oh,
All right, let's see.
no questions?
Someone.
There's
Okay.
one over there.
There's someone.
Good morning. This is for Carlos. 20 years ago, you did an exhibit at ICA in Philadelphia. You took Serrano Jose Bedia, which point I bought a bunch of Bedias. I was a pen at the time, and I have since sold them over time and done very well. Went back and endowed a scholarship out of that. What are you buying next?
Ah. You have to ask Rosa.
He's not lying.
Uh-oh.
Actually, we just bought a Thomas Housego right here. Not that, yesterday, the day before.
Not your first, I'm guessing.
Not my first, our fifth.
One of the questions that has been raised this year is about the impact on the local galleries. How many of you have bought from galleries here in Miami?
Always.
So, oh, there's different kind of groups. Which galleries
He's
are you
sitting
going
right.
to?
Where's Fred?
There's Fred. Okay, Fred Snitzer. What other galleries? Some of the galleries that might not be a household name at this point. Who do you check out? Dennis?
Well, we always look at the shows at Fred's. We look at David Castillo's gallery. We look at Diet Gallery. There are a number of other galleries that are representing even younger artists. Anthony Spinello is doing some interesting projects with folks. So, the Miami gallery scene is doing a good job for our community's artists. I think that they're giving them a chance to show, and I think that the other thing is that there are these collectors that the fair has really brought along. They get the circus comes to town once a week. 1 week a year, and then everybody goes home, and yet people still have this pent-up desire to want to collect. And so the galleries here have created and nurtured a lot of collectors who buy 10 things a year, or 12 things a year, or 5 things a year. So Miami has a collecting pool of, I would say, anywhere between 30 and 50 people that are buying multiple works, regularly each year.
Well, and this year there's 3 Miami galleries represented in Art Basel, which is actually a pretty good average if you think of cities outside of New York or LA. That's a very good average for a city, and but particularly 2 of the younger galleries. Besides Fred Snitzer, who's been here since the beginning, there's 2 young galleries, and it's Castillo and Cheris Weinberg. So it's also a great way to get exposure for these galleries, and of course there's the satellite fairs all through the city as well, where a lot of the Miami galleries are. But it's also important to realize that not even New York can galleries depend on their local market, and that's why there's fairs. They're out there all over the world meeting new collectors in order to bring attention to what they were doing. Marty, do you go to the galleries locally?
Yes, there's a gallery that I've gotten several pieces of work from, named Dorsch Gallery. He's a pioneer in the Wynwood area. He shows young artists, and one particular artist that we've got several of his works is Ralph Provocero, who is an excellent sculptor. And he has a piece on the University of Miami campus that was commissioned by a local woman who liked his work and donated the work to U of M. Forgive me, but the other name escapes me, but we do have her work now at the warehouse. It's a video of troops walking. I don't know the name, but we got that, and we have several photographs by a photography gallery down in the Wynwood area. So we're very conscious of some of the works, and we do travel around the neighborhood to find that elusive kind of work that we enjoy.
Well, it's also, the fact that you are collecting the Miami artists, really, as someone that studies consensus, is really important. I think right from the beginning, because of the collectors coming to the homes, and the excitement was not so much seeing the artists they already knew, but seeing the artists they didn't know. And I think that that had a really major impact on our local scene, that all of a sudden there was this great interest in artists that were based in Miami that might not have happened without the fair, without your support of these artists. There is a question over here. Now everyone's charging up. Okay.
Hi, Wendy Rugg. I just wanted to add and ask a question also. We left out the New World Center, and Frank Gehry is one of our most important cultural destinations in this area, which rivals anyone in the world. But I wanted to thank all of you for your role in educating our youngsters, because as an educator myself, I know how important it is. But we're reading in education today that our governor is cutting the arts almost every other day in our schools. Are any of you collectively or singly involved in lobbying up in Tallahassee to keep the arts in our schools and not cut them anymore, as he's been doing? Thank you.
Anybody want to answer?
What's the question?
The question is anyone lobbying the state legislator to keep arts in the schools?
Say no.
Oh, look, Dennis?
I think what we've found is that it's very difficult to mandate arts education in the public school system. And what you hear about Carlos and Rosa doing, what you hear about the kind of tours that people are giving, what the Knight Foundation has done is participated within the system with something called the Cultural Passport, where every child in the system for 13 years gets a field trip, including all of the museums in this community. So we haven't found that approach to be as successful as simply kind of rolling up our sleeves together and making sure that kids see what's here. It's just, that's how we've approached it. So I think that's been we've been frustrated by the system, I think, and so therefore we've just tried to kind of work around the margins a little bit. And I think that with 130,000 kids this year in Dade County getting a cultural passport field trip, that we're starting to make a little impact.
Yes. But I also feel that frankly, the administration of most institutions, I'm not sure that they really want an uncontrolled mass of people sort of intervening and asking how the political process is to work. I mean, my experience with these institutions is that they want to be able to ask for their priority of programs, and I have been involved in that with UM in particular over many years. But it's difficult to, if I were the president of an institution, I wouldn't want to have everybody go tell the governor how to do things in my institution, in the one that I'm going to be responsible for.
And I could say that we just recently at MoCA received a major grant from the Knight Foundation for our MoCA Art Institute, which is for specifically for our free teen programs. So each one of them are individually making things happen in Miami, and it's the children. There's access for them.
Hello? First of all, thank everybody for making this all happen and growing what's here. My name is Lisa Dawn Gold. When I was a very young artist, I encountered a New York art collector, Emily Fisher Landau, and she had, I guess, an art consultant. And, as a young artist, it was like, wait, how can you have somebody else buy your art? And I told her, you need to trust your gut. There's that moment that you respond, and then everybody tells you, oh no, don't do that. But you had that moment, and I want to know how much here everybody trusts that moment and in their purchases and their versus what someone tells you, or, how strong is your collection built on your gut response?
Irma, Norman, you want to
Go
ahead, honey.
My friend once said, would you do brain surgery on yourself? She sort of felt that way about an art consultant, that it's the same thing, that you need some kind of help that's a little more educated than most of us are. We have had a lot of help building our collection. Part of that help meant that we were not in New York every week, and that when that market was hot and there were lists and you wanted to get that piece of art, you better be in line. And we had someone in line for us, because we weren't living, to live in New York at that time, today it's all changed somewhat. To be in New York at that time, you were able to buy art before anyone from Miami, unless you were there every week. They knew the galleries, the art was hard to get, they were really particular to whom they were selling, and we needed someone there. We have someone today, he's not a consultant, but I would say he's a friend who looks, and he could be in Paris and call and say, I saw something you are really gonna like. You wanna take a look at it? You want me to send something? You wanna fly in here? We never buy blind. We do not have a paid consultant now. We have
Nor
had.
do we have a curator.
Nor do we have a curator. We did in the beginning to help us. We walked into this uneducated. We saw something we liked, didn't know if it was worth anything, and we knew what we had to pay, and we asked someone to help us. And I would say that person educated us, and at this point, we don't have that. But in the beginning, it was very important for us.
Mm-hmm. Marty, you had a similar experience. Didn't you start originally with someone advising you?
The lady from Texas.
Yes, originally there was a woman out of Texas who I bumped into at an auction. I was bidding on a work, and it was a reasonably priced work, and I saw her after the auction, and I was not successful in acquiring the work. It was a Noguchi sculpture, and she said, I can get you one of those, just another edition. So I took a card. I said, okay, get it for me, whatever, the same price that it was sold for. And she got it, and she called me up, and I said, well, I gotta have 4 months to pay, and so forth. Anyway, she became a person who introduced me to dealers, and she was extremely influential in getting me into the game. It wasn't a matter of, do you like this or do you like that? It was exposing me to the dealers and to the whole process of meeting people and going around to galleries and museums. And she lived in Texas, and she was very helpful in the Nasher collection. She got work for them. And unfortunately, she passed on at a very young age. And but she introduced me to Leo Castelli and Andre Emmerich, Arnie Glimcher, Pace, and Xavier Fourcade. And so after she passed on, I felt a little more confident in going to some of these galleries, because when I first was exposed to all this, it was very intimidating, because some of these galleries could talk about nothing and make something out of it. It was just amazing. And
That doesn't happen anymore.
so I said, what are they talking about? I'm just a real estate developer, and I know about blocks, and I know about steel, and these guys have a white painting, and you'd think that, it's about the aesthetic of nothingness.
This is from a guy who owns like 20 Rymans, by the way, just in case you're wondering.
I started getting more and more involved, reading more, learning more. The key to all this is learning, because when you learn about something, it helps you see it better. That doesn't mean you're going to like it, but it means that you know why something is there. John Cage once said, wow, this is terrific, this painting. You can paint something about nothing. And the man that was with him said, but John, it's about everything.
That's Great.
So, as much you expose yourself to as much as you can, and now, of course, so many years, I wouldn't even think of having an advisor. Because I have the fun of doing it myself, hanging the work, and I'm out there, and it's hard work.
Alan Benowitz, you're all to be commended for the wonderful work and opportunities you provided artists in our community and for the youth in our community. I have a twofold question. What is your opinion, this is to the panel, as to how the Bakehouse Art Complex in Wynwood is doing in affording opportunities for emerging artists and exposing them? And secondly, how many of you have visited the Bakehouse and taken a tour of these 70 studios?
Anyone want to answer?
What is the question?
Have you ever gone to the Bakehouse?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've toured it, and I bought work there.
I understand this past week you did obtain a piece from one of the emerging photographers.
You just acquired a work by one of the photographers there.
I did? I did?
That's what he said. He thought. He knows you did.
Anyway, back to the other question.
Constance is in trouble.
Back to the other question. How do you feel the Bakehouse is doing with regard to exposing and providing opportunities for the artists in the community and to collectors?
Dennis?
For example, we in the foundation opened 2 years ago our prizes to all the Latin Americans that are living here, and this year we have 2 of the prizes of the 2 local emerging and mid-career artists won the prize for the foundation. So, and we have also grew our board of advisors on, with people, local people, and local artists.
Dennis, you probably are very familiar with the Bakehouse. Is that something you've been evaluating? You've go to?
Well, we funded at the Knight Foundation a collaboration last year between Primary Flight and the Bakehouse for one of the projects. So, I think the Bakehouse is coming along. I think it's a work in progress. I think that it's very important to provide those kinds of opportunities for working artists, and it continues to do so.
Carol Padberg. First of all, I'm so impressed with the generosity of your sharing your experiences today, and also the generosity that has allowed you to really impact the communities here. My question is, as you've been doing activities that have really strengthened the community and the democracy in this part of the country, do you know of other collectors who are impacting their metropolitan communities in a similar way across the country? And what are some of those collectors who really stand out in terms of their commitment to education and civic development?
Fun? The one that comes to mind for me is really Dallas right now.
That's what I was going to say.
Between the Hoffmans and Howard Rashofsky, Didi, and he gave his house, opened it up to the public. Gave his house to the institution, opened it up to the public many times. They got together and in a unbelievably beautiful gesture, 3 of them put their collections together and donated them to the Dallas Museum of Art. That's an offering of almost unbelievable gift. It's just an amazing gesture. And so, Dallas is a little bit like Miami in that it is only now kind of having this cultural moment. And so I think you can't look around the country without stopping there and talking about what an incredible philanthropic gesture that was by those 3 families.
Well, the 2 communities, besides what Dennis said, that come to mind are Seattle and San Francisco. Mm-hmm. When Don Fisher passed away of the Gap, he devoted his whole collection to the museum, and they're fundraising now, the Schwabs and several other prominent collectors, and they're building a museum onto the San Francisco Museum. The other community, which was very impressive, was when we visited Seattle. there were primarily 4 or 5 mega collectors, the Shirleys and several other the people, the Bagley Wright, who started it all. And to see their collections were really very, very impressive. Hadreen, and they are all putting their collections with the Seattle Art Museum. So this is just a wonderful spirit of community and giving. And those 3 communities, Dallas, Seattle, and San Francisco, they have the collectors, and the collectors have stepped forward.
I think one of the most important things about Miami is that we are strive to be self-critical, because sometimes I think we aren't. I know a lot of artists who do not fall into the rubric of Art Basel. They don't want anything to do with it, and other artists who do. But I was wondering, what is the future for us here? What would you say would be the one thing that could bring about the most amount of change to embrace a city that is so large, so spread out, and so diverse?
Dennis, you probably know the community best.
Well, I just think the one missing link right now is a really great MFA program with internationally renowned teachers. And we've been working on that, and frankly, the recession set us back. But we were all kind of pulling that oar for a while, and we were trying to get, there are guys like John Baldessari, that, and Lawrence Weiner, they're dying to come down here and teach. And, we've all talked about it. And I really feel that that's the missing link. That's what has made LA what it is. And I think that if we could get that kind of upper strata MFA program with strong working artists teaching, that to me is what really is missing in the community right now.
And it works twofold in that you're not only educating artists here, but it's also bringing in artists to live here, and also students from elsewhere that then go out. And I lived in LA several years, and I could attest to the fact that having the strong art schools, it wasn't just one, it was several, that made it, it was a art world based on artists. And from the artists, it grew from there. And we have great artists here, but we do need to have more of that international mix.
Well, I think we're a very young community, and I think we have to understand that. We're not an established, we're not established the way some of these, Chicago, Los Angeles, even Seattle, and San Francisco. I mean, if you look at our history, we're really a post-World War II community. I don't think any of us on this stage here were even born here in Miami. So I think that we've made enormous strides, especially over these last 11 years since the announcement was made that Art Basel was coming here. But I think we have to understand that this is not just an ordinary fair as far as dealers setting up stands here. Art Basel has created has made this community think about its future as a community and where it stands as far as the arts is concerned. As I said before, we have a wonderful new museum being built on the bay. MoCA is undergoing tremendous expansion. The Bass Museum has changed radically with a new director and a new chair of the board. I can go on and on and on in so many of these areas. I mean, we're very critical of ourselves, but I think if we really sat back and really analyzed and asked ourselves the question, where are we today compared to where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we have a heck of a lot to be very proud of as far as this community is concerned.
Yeah, it's truly phenomenal.
Howard Resin, Los Angeles. This is to Mr. Margulies or anyone on the panel. Talk a lot about educating children. I'm curious from the other point of view. Most of your collections are the new, the cutting edge, contemporary. How do children respond to this type of genre and the things that they see, and how do they respond to you in terms of their enthusiasm and the stimulation to go further.
A lot better than adults do.
Yeah. And it's incredible to see we have programs, family programs over the weekends, and we just had an event on painting, with graffiti one of our walls, and the kids came to paint the walls, and it was like, an incredible sight, that all these kids wanted to be part of that wall and paint with the graffiter who was doing the job. I mean, it's incredible. And I think the kids here are really realizing that this is part of their culture. This is part of their, part of their education. It's easier now for a kid to be related to what's going on in Miami than maybe what you were saying 10 years ago. Or
What also is very interesting about it is, relating to Miami, we're bringing today from the Museum of Contemporary Art about 40 kids, teens, to Art Basel. Now, it's one thing bringing them to Art Basel, but it was another thing to get them out of their own neighborhoods. One of the things about art in our community is it's getting people, not just children, but people crossing the different cities and areas that make up our county or whole region. And I think that's really interesting as well, of how it's changed Miami or South Florida. I mean, there's actually people coming from Palm Beach. I mean, I always hear, "Oh, I'm sorry you had to make the drive. It's only an hour away." But they drive because it's for art. And I think that's also a very interesting thing that has changed. And you also have the children coming in and seeing how, different areas. And
Well, the kids that we see, many of them are art students, so they have a tremendous thirst for knowledge. Other kids just come in, this is their first exposure to art, so they respond to the videos. They respond to the large color photos, which are very identifiable, image-wise. Sculpture, they know its space. They do not respond to the black and white photos which we collect. So we try and create something where we can explain something to them, but they don't find it that interesting. And so, but their real response for the younger kids is the videos.
you already had a question.
Alan Benowitz, this may be an interesting forum to ask the following question. We're all aware of the controversy over the naming of the Miami Art Museum by a private collector. What is your feeling about this naming
let's not
of a
get
public
into that.
entity?
No comment.
that's not,
Yeah, let's
No
not get
comment.
into that.
I don't think
About
this
the
is
Miami
to
Art Museum.
discuss.
The new museum.
About the
Let me
naming.
make a comment. I'm
About the
curious, how
naming.
many people here are from out of town in this room here?
Wow.
That's great. Let
Okay,
me tell you something else about this community, which I think is important. Which I think is important to understand, and how the arts all work together, and everything that's really happened here during during these 10 years here. We have the I don't know if you've seen this wonderful New World Center here that was designed by Frank Gehry. Have you had an opportunity to visit that? Well, I'll tell you, it is so incredibly unique because it was designed in a manner of also utilizing the visual arts at the same time music is being played there. It was really worked on by Frank Gehry and Michael Tilson Thomas. And the New World Symphony Orchestra, which is for young people, is one of its kind. Doesn't exist anywhere in the world. It's a world-acclaimed orchestra here. Miami has become the winter home of the Cleveland Orchestra, one of the finest orchestras in the entire world here. We have the Arch Performing Arts Center here, wonderful symphony hall, a wonderful opera hall and ballet hall. We have a world-class ballet company in this community here. So much has occurred here over the years in a relatively young community. And everything here with the visual arts and with Art Basel just ties this community together in so many different areas. It's not merely about painting, it's not merely about sculpture, it's really about building a community. All of these play a very vital role in where we are today as a community.
Hi, I'm Francesca Pini. I'm journalist with Corriere della Sera in Milan, Italy. So I really enjoyed in those days visiting your collection. I think it's a very hard job as well. I have a question, maybe it's a very naive question, but how far do you make a personal scouting of young talents without recurring to professional, I mean art advisor, art dealers, galleries, and curators? Thank you.
I think, I mean, my case, I think it's the need to investigate and to learn something new and to see something new and don't stay within the same context that what we see every day in all the galleries. So if you're really interested in art, then you want to investigate and take a look at different things and see something new. So, you know, if you go to galleries, if you go to, in our case, for example, we give these prizes and we have like 40 curators in our board of advisors who really chooses all the projects that we see every day. And that gives us a wider spectrum of what to see in Latin America and what is emerging and what is happening, but also all around the world. If you're really a collector, you want to investigate. You want to go there and see what's happening in any of the new spaces that they're opening, and that gives you an idea. Also, your eye gets trained with time, and then it's much easier to choose, you know, an artist or to find out what would be next.
I was just going to say that I have 260 of the greatest art advisors in the world sitting right out there. You know, the dealer, the gallerists are brilliant at what they do, and when you develop a relationship with them that you trust, it's a game changer for a collector because they're just as interested in having their artists looked after as you are in collecting the work. So advisors are great, and I think that people who feel comfortable going that route, it's a great route to move faster if you choose to as a collector, and also if you're going after things that are really, really significant, it helps to have that independent advice. But when you're buying really young work, I don't think the advisors know any more than you do because it's all brand new work. So, but I do believe that the gallerists spend so much time looking and sifting and choosing those dozen or 15 or 20 artists for their gallery. And so I think that's where the real opportunity is for you as a collector to get comfort. Those I can assure you those gallerists have looked at 100 artists for every one that they've taken onto the gallery.
I'm curious, with so many people from out of town in the audience, I'd love to hear from one of you what you think of the Miami art community, what you've seen as a result of it. Okay, we have one. Oh, sure. Actually, I told her.
Lisa Dawn Gold, I'm in Telluride, Colorado now.
Can't hear you.
Lisa Dawn Gold, I'm in Telluride, Colorado now. I was always involved in the New York art world, and what I notice from listening to you, which I highly commend, going to many different markets and looking to expand outside of New York. You know, at one point New York was the center of the universe, but it's not that way anymore. Everywhere I went to expand to different galleries, people said, oh, people really spend their money in New York, and then it became New York and LA. So from my personal research, what I'm hearing from you, I commend you hugely on supporting your own community and purchasing art from your galleries here. So that's something I notice that's different than what I have found out there.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Stacy Goes, and I would like to answer that question. I would drive across miles and miles of this country to come here to this show. It's fantastic. The city lights up with lights and colors and brilliant people from all over the world. And I just wanted to make one quick comment on Martin's book. That's one of my best books for my entire collection that was to benefit the homeless.
Your book.
Your book, Martin, is fantastic. I just wanted to thank you for that book.
She thought your book was fantastic.
Thank you.
Hal Braman. As an art dealer from New York, I couldn't agree more with Dennis's comments. Art dealers look at so much art, and let's remember that an art dealer is putting their money on the line because they're showing work that they are backing. And they're hoping that the public, that curators, that collectors will respond to that work. All of you have done an incredible job in terms of collecting, I think, what you like, what appeals to you. And it's terrific to have good advice, especially if you're looking for things that are rare. But when you see a work of art that you love and it sticks with you, buy it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Renee Novick, and just to answer your question, I'm from San Francisco, and I collect in San Francisco, and this is my first time at Art Basel, Miami. It's phenomenal.
Where you been?
The the quality and the diversity is just fantastic, and I've done this major collection, or the major exhibits here, Art Miami, the offshoot exhibits, and today we're going to the Margulies and De La Cruz collections. It's absolutely astounding, and I'm coming next year too.
Great. I think we have time for one more question.
Well, thank you. I'm Ricardo Romo. I'm president of the University of Texas, San Antonio. And I have been there the last 12 years. And we've bought about 500 art pieces for our campus because I got there and the walls were all blank and we needed some art. So I'm learning a lot. This is my first visit. Certainly the point made about a fine arts program and improving that is a really good point. In fact, we just created a ceramics new workshop that's one of the best in the country. So we were very keen on improving the situation for San Antonio and our university and our artists. My wife and I are both collectors of Latino art and been collecting 40 years. So we have a great passion for art, but we also think we're in the best situation of working at an institution where you work with young people and see them coming through the art world. We can expand our educational programs, and at the same time, we're privileged to be able to push the university to buy art, and we've bought a lot of it. So I'm excited about what you're doing. It's going to be for me, it's a great model for many cities. I'm hoping that San Antonio will expand, and I think we have 9 galleries. Maybe one day we'll have 70. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. I have one other point for us, our panels. You've all been, as you said, collecting 30, 33, 40 years, and that's great. And you've been a driving force, not only as collectors, but leaders in our community. In order for Miami to continue, we have to have the next generation of leaders and collectors. And I wanted to know whether any of you are, in a way, mentoring young collectors, encouraging others as leaders. I mean, this is going to be essential for our future.
My personal experience.
Can it be your children?
Yeah, my children are the first. They're mentoring. They're the three from the 3 daughters I have. 2 are collectors. One is mainly photography, and the other one is collecting works from women. But not only that, their friends are coming to me now and saying, I want to start buying. I want you to teach me what should I look at. And a lot of people, a lot of young people come to me, asking me to help. And they call me when they're on the fair. They tell me, I'm in here, can you come and help me? So yes, there's a lot of that happening.
Which will be essential.
Yes, and
You're all role models.
Yeah.
Marty, also, your sons have been interested in collecting, and other young people that you've been involved with.
Well, they have their own life, and they're enjoying their life, and they haven't given me any indication of collecting. One of them is very dedicated to being an attorney who is a state prosecutor in Gainesville, Florida. He doesn't want to come back to Miami. And they haven't have an inclination, but I must say that in terms of the younger generation, and I must compliment Bonnie because her programs at that museum are really geared to many, many young people, and many of these people that she is catering to are people of minority groups, people that need help. And so my hat's off to you, Bonnie, and congratulations on a great job you're doing.
We have two daughters who collect, and both of them collect art totally different than the art that we collect. And I may add, neither of them have ever asked our opinion on anything that they have ever purchased.
No, they never had a
And yesterday, we
They
were at the
never
fair
do.
together, and at the end of the day, our daughter called and went, got a great piece. But I think that's more typical.
Well, and we're very fortunate that Rosa and Carlos have 5 kids.
Right.
Almost all of them, I think, are as
All but
obsessive.
one.
All but one.
All but one are collectors, and actually 3 of them, I think, you've been to their homes
Yes.
for Enchanted Evenings, which are fundraising, the ones that for Mocha that Irma was pushing before, which were very effective for Mocha for fundraising. And yes, and they do collect the same things we do, actually. But and sometimes there's a little bit of competition between their mother and their own purchases.
And each having an impact in the cities they live.
Right.
Your son Alberto,
Yeah, in Puerto Rico.
particularly in Puerto Rico. And someday I have to do a study about his impact because the world's going to want to know why all of a sudden there were so many contemporary German artists in the collections in San Juan. And their son is extremely dynamic and has a whole group of people following him.
Right.
And if you want to know where all the contemporary German art is right now, it's in San Juan. So it is great that not only have you had a life enriched by art, and particularly modern and contemporary art, but it will continue through your children and also what you've done for the community. So I thank each one of you for being here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Basel.
You guys.
And the audience as well. Thank you. And to Art Basel.